Hello. Today we're going to be talking about 2120 by George Wylesol. George Wylesol was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1989. I believe he's 36 or 37 as of recording this video. He mastered in fine arts at Maryland Institute College of Arts, and he has worked as a professor of illustration at various universities, including the one he mastered. He's most well known for his illustrations. Before 2120, he wrote several books, all of them featuring this computer drawn style. And he takes a lot of inspiration from early computer games. And 2120 is an interactive adventure graphic novel taking place in a liminal office building. I'm using the word interactive adventure graphic novel because I believe that's what he described his own book to be like. The premise of 2120 is you play as Wade Duffy, a computer repairman, and he goes into building 2120 Macmillan Drive to fix a computer. Now, at first, everything seems relatively normal. The building seems entirely ordinary. But as he goes inside, he gets lost in this seemingly endless building and appears a lot bigger on the inside. As you're reading the book, there are various clues to help you solve puzzles, and then flipping to that respective page number. And some things I want to note about the book is that there are various NPC characters that will talk to you at various points. And another notable thing is that there's also some red writing that points to various clues that you may need for progressing through the story. The story of 2120 is revealed to you in brief glimpses. So this is, to the best of my ability, is what I found. The story takes place in a computer simulation, meaning Wade is an AI. In fact, the whole building was made to train Wade to become conscious. And this was first created by the Division of Advanced Computing, which is a government agency in the story. And when you reach the end, you meet the boss who was controlling and leaving various clues behind. But there's also the book points to the fact that there are also multiple versions of Wade currently in the building. For example, there's a red room with a version of him in it. And there are also various examples of multiple Wades being present. And what happens is when you get to the end, Wade meets an older version of himself. And his final task to sort of become conscious is to unplug the older Wade from the simulation. Because the older Wade was the most recently developed version of him. And so the newer Wade was training off of the older Wade's memories. And yeah, so it's revealed that the red writing was from Wade, an older version of Wade, leaving behind some clues for him to find. And at the very, very end, you get to address Wade directly instead of through these yellow prompts. And Wade speaks to you directly and tells you to either kill him or leave him be. And I think a nice touch is that if you decide to kill him, you have to close the book physically, therefore literally ending the story. So the timeline, so this is sort of the more confusing part. There are a lot of missing pieces. I think Wylesol obviously didn't want to reveal too much all at once, but this was what I could discover just on the surface. So the DAC, or the Department of Advanced Computing, was a government organization created in 1988 to create an artificial intelligence. And in 1991, Michael M. Fountain becomes the overseer of DAC. And in 1992, the DAC begins a project called Project Macmillan, which is named after Arthur Macmillan. There's also references to Arthur, but I'm not really sure what his involvement is, other than that the project is named after him. Okay, and as the project was going on, Fountain became invested into Wade's training, and he even placed an avatar of himself into the simulation to sort of teach and guide Wade through the building. But later on, Fountain is eventually discovered trying to leak Wade's source code somewhere around 1996, and then he testified to the public that the project was trying to create a hell and that he viewed this as inhumane and potentially dangerous. And then he was arrested and then sentenced to death in 1996. But after Fountain's death, Project Macmillan was decommissioned, but the simulation running Wade kept on going for 46 years until 2039. At the very beginning of the book, there's a note saying Wade is 46 years old. So presumably this is a version of Wade that began to live after the death of his creator. And the title 2120 comes from the version of Wade that was able to achieve consciousness and sort of address the viewer directly. So really the main themes, the story itself is very, very interesting and also very relevant even now, because obviously, AI is sort of in everyone's mind these days. And obviously, Wylesol is building upon this idea into what might happen. I believe there is also more examples of fiction trying to play with this idea of a consciousness in a simulation left to run forever. And that sort of resembles what hell might look like, because living with the knowledge that you're not real and stuck in this limited view is, like Fountain described it, creating a hell in the world. There's also a very obvious metaphor for God. Fountain being the overseer and Wade being stuck in this reality. And when Wade decides to question why he was put through all this, Fountain isn't really able to give him an answer. He thought, because in Fountain's perspective, he was creating something beautiful, something well-rounded by letting him experience all forms of emotion. But it seems, and Wade, of course, rejects Fountain. At the very end, he decides to leave. Sorry, I didn't even mention the 6 other characters that you meet at the very end. And Fountain deliberately put these characters here to provide Wade with the full experience of a real human life. But what ends up happening is, if Wade decides to interact with any of them, he dies and the simulation has to be restarted. Another thing I noticed that was very unique was, so in the very beginning, there's a computer and Wade logs into it using his name, but he makes a typo. And the lesser NPCs refer to him by the typo instead of his real name. But the 6 people, well, I guess 5, because one of them is a baby. But the characters at the end refer to him by his real name, sort of displaying familiarity with Wade. So I was wondering if Wade was based on a real person and the people were individuals he knew and were replicated, or at least they also display a similar but lesser level of consciousness than Wade, because Wade has been here for so long that there are other conscious AIs with him. But I don't think that's the case. It's just an observation.